cool.
Well, you're the sharp young leader there at the Saddleback Internet Campus. And a lot of people, when I connect with church leaders around the country, they want to know what's going on at Saddleback. So I'm so glad that we could have some time to chat about what you do and what Saddleback is doing, and also what Saddleback is dreaming when it comes to this segment of this incredible church and move of God called Saddleback Church, and what Rick Warren's doing. So how did you prepare for your role to be an internet campus pastor?
Yeah, well, I want to thank you again for letting me share a little bit what we're doing. I feel very grateful. I'm at a church that is it's just amazing, and our pastor, our leadership allows, young leaders to do a lot of different things, and it's been really fun. I prepared for my role, kind of crazy. I started doing ministry online on the internet campus as a volunteer. Really, I was getting paid to do something else at Saddleback, take care of some ministries on a communication team. And pretty much the internet campus was something that was there, but we didn't find or didn't see the potential yet. I would say that our church has definitely done things online pretty quickly. Pastor Rick always talks about we were one of the first churches, 10, 15 years ago to have a website and a lot of other things that we've done online. And so we're always kind of checking out things. And we started an internet campus originally just as for members only. There was always this fear of, if you read Purpose Driven Church, Rick kind of shares his thoughts about not being a televangelist and not sharing some things. That was always close. He always really wanted to draw people to a healthy environment. And so we always kind of reluctantly did things online to try to figure out what's healthy, what's not, what's orthodox, what's not orthodox, and so forth. And pretty much I got thrown into it because I saw that we were streaming things online and we had taken down a password. So it was open. There was no regulation. People can just jump on. And I started to mess around and just do different things. And eventually I started to prepare by checking out what other churches were doing online. I checked out what other popular, streaming sites did, sites like, Ustream. I spent a lot of time checking out, what ESPN did with a lot of their online streaming. I was one of the first people in the first month on Netflix and Hulu and different things like that. So what I did was meticulously look at how people provided content online. The big difference between an internet campus, online campus, virtual campus, there's a lot of names for it. But the big difference is we're not a stream. We want to be a community. And so providing content's one thing, but trying to show and provide a way for people to interact, that's a whole nother thing. And that's what makes it an actual campus. I think a lot of churches are great at the content delivery, but where churches are trying to figure out, and I'm in this boat, to be honest, is how do we allow for community to happen online and offline? And how do we picture that and allow connection to start? And how do we allow their faith to kind of bleed in and saturate into everything, their 24/7 world? And I think that's where it's difficult. And I prepare now by just every time I see anything that maybe that's on television or online, and they provide some kind of content, and maybe on a big platform. I'm always curious that how do they provide it on a big level? Because it's kind of easy to do something with only a couple people, but how do you do it on a bigger scale? That's a hard thing. So I'm usually spending a lot of research time, just checking out things. And so obviously a big thing is talking to other pastors that have done stuff online. I'm friends with Alan at Life Church and different places like that, and just hearing the wisdom that they're doing in other churches, things they've learned. And there's a lot of just, I've probably talked to 15 to 20 online campus pastors and just asked them, hey, success, failure, what are you learning? And honestly, that's a lot of encouragement and just kind of seeing where we're all at. And the community online, pastors all around the country and the world, hands down, some of the most open, gracious, godly people. And it's been so cool because everyone wants to learn from each other. It's like open source, to the extreme. It's just really cool. Everyone's sharing different things. We're sending packets, info, stuff we've written up, code, anything. And so I spent a lot of time talking to wise people and looking what others are doing. And I don't limit that just to the church world. I also go outside and see, what is the kind of the secular world doing online, because I think there's some really cool technology being implemented, and I'm curious of how we can leverage that to save lives and help empower people to live for Jesus. So that's kind of like how I've done it, and I would say I'm in process, and I think because of technology, I'm always gonna be in process.
That's right, and that's the thing about technology. It's like once you decide to get on the treadmill, then it's a matter of keeping up because it's constantly moving. Boy,
Totally, it's some people it's nerve wracking, but to me it's exciting to kind of see, well, that's this way. And I think a lot of the conversation that people have online with fears, is this sound or is that good? And I go, you know what? Did people think even people would spend as much time online, 5 years ago? I was just looking at something a couple days ago, and they're saying the last 10 years, internet traffic within countries is up like, almost 530%. And it's like, it's because it's easier and easier. And I believe as it becomes easier and easier to kind of do what we're doing face to face, as the barriers drop, people are going to become less fearful of the theology because it's going to become more real and authentic. And the harder it is, the more people are going to be, kind of putting up stop signs. But as this becomes more real, which I believe it will, I think technology is going that way. I think movies, how a lot of times how they picture things, as that becomes more authentic and real, we're going to be more okay with that. And I think it's okay to be, cautious. I think that's wise. But anyways, that's kind of some of the stuff we've gone through personally. I go to kind of learn and prepare even now. So,
well, that's a great setup, and you're probably one of the most visible online of the internet campus pastors that actually show your face and create videos to make yourself visible. A lot of times, and I've been tracking this whole internet campus church thing for 6 years now, just compiling a list of which churches are doing it so that we can begin to learn from each other. And then with this podcast, Social Media Church, we're actually recording those conversations so that churches that are in process and looking at taking that next step of faith to go online can learn and glean from the wisdom of conversations that happen. So, so glad you could be a part of this too, and to kind of pay it forward so others can learn. But what's been helpful to you, aside from the one-on-one conversations? What's helped you to keep up on that research part of technology in the non-church world?
Man,
which blogs do you read, or magazines or newspapers?
I would say being, I'm 25, so I'm definitely in the generation of where online is just built in.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say just being my age and even just observing the culture within my friends and the people either I went to school with or, that I do life with, in my small group. At Saddleback we do small group. So, with my small group, I observe what catches on. And so I do a lot of just what interests me. And I use that as a kind of one of the telltale signs of, okay, should we do something on that? If it's anything from, getting on something like Instagram or Pinterest or YouTube, or changing over from YouTube to Vimeo, like there's all these different avenues, all these great tools. And I kind of check, okay, what's my community doing? And then I kind of observe, the usage. But blogs and stuff like that, I definitely check out Mashable. Mashable is definitely one of the more premium deals. And that's probably the more regular one that I watch trends on, just because I really like the format and the layout. Outside of that, I usually keep updated with insiders within Microsoft and Apple, just to kind of see different things, at least the tone of conversation, or at least, it's kind of cool. You can see directionally where companies are going just by the way that, they file patents or different things like that, but that's a little bit more detailed and meticulous. I do a lot of stuff generally with Mashable, and then I watch when websites update, like if it's Netflix releases something just for kids, they just did that release, and I'm kind of, oh, that's kind of interesting. So it makes me start thinking about, okay, how am I providing, let's say spiritual growth or tracks for families online. And so I provide obviously our content for our main worship center, through Pastor Rick and different people, but we don't have anything online for kids or teenagers. And so that makes me think. And so generally it's kind of masterable in a couple other side deals. I do a lot, actually, something I do is I have a couple lists on Twitter, and I follow a lot of tech writers and different people. And that's really helpful because that's so live, it's ridiculous. You can just, you can follow, I'll follow, I have like news outlets, and it's so funny how, websites won't update, but I can see it from the actual, writer, 10 minutes before the website gets updated. So there's some people on Twitter that I follow. I would have to look up the exact names because it's usually, by the company or the magazine, but those are kind of some of the places I go to. And I would also say, I'm fortunate that I serve under a pastor that's pretty savvy on a lot of things. And so he sends all staff emails. I follow him on Twitter and stuff. And so he's usually pushing us as a staff so much forward. And it's kind of like, I have the benefit of not having, I think John Maxwell talks about it, the leadership lid. You have a lid.
Yes, yes.
Rick, I'm never going to hit his lid, like he allows for so much freedom, and he's always pushing us so much forward
Great.
that, you know what I mean?
Well, I've heard that Rick Warren does 100% of his own tweets, so it's not staffed out or farmed out or outsourced overseas.
First job, at not my first job, but one of my first roles at Saddleback was to start the social media ministry, our Facebook, Twitter ministry. And I got to be honest, as I talk to people all around the country, that's the number one question people ask me is, hey, does Rick really tweet? And I'm like, yes, he does. Do you see how he tweets? He'll tweet in like 20 tweets in a row. That's how he thinks. That's the mind of just that. That's how he processes. So it is all him. So it is all him.
Okay, so how did you transition from volunteer to, I'm guessing, full-time staff as Internet Campus pastor, and what have you learned in that process as a church?
Definitely. Well, again, I mean, I started on the team as we have a communication team, and we have different ministries: a photo ministry, a video ministry, a writing ministry, and there's a lot of people. There's about 600 people that serve in that ministry, and in different ministries on our communication team. I kind of call them always the professional ministries. Usually, we had a lot of people that did this, kind of like with your world. We actually had a web design ministry and a web development ministry in different facets. So we would try to use people that have those skills to, they wanted to use their shape to serve God. And so what happened was, one of the ministries we started was a Facebook, Twitter ministry. And over time, I started that and started to interact and do more and more things. And through that, being knee deep in on Facebook and Twitter, seeing life change happening and connections happening, I saw the potential online more and more. And eventually we were doing things online, and I said, hey, can I just help out? And I just started helping out. And literally all I was doing was the message was being streamed 5 times a week. And I said, can I get the response card sent to me so I can follow up with people? I just want to follow up with people. Hey, can I have rights to their Facebook page, their Twitter account? And so what I did was, we didn't have the ability to do a video before and after. They didn't know who I was unless they went to the blog or they went to our Facebook page and our, I think at the time it was a fan page, and our Twitter account. And so I just started to mess around, and lives started to change, and people started to notice. And over time, they poured more and more resources into it. And the first step was, they put me part-time. They said, part-time over here, part-time over here. And, I bet you see that. That's the majority of the online campus pastors. They're like a full-time production guy, or they're a web guy on a team. And they're the associate of the online campus pastor. And that's usually how people go. And they're part-time either because they don't know how to do it yet, or they don't see the financial benefit yet, let's say. And I say financial because they're worried that it won't pan out. And so there's a lot of, they take it slow, which I think it's wise with the resources. Not everyone needs an online campus. But I just started to mess around on there. And they got the first after they put me part time, they got one of my friends, Johnny Baker, Pastor Johnny, to start helping out online to be kind of the face, and we started working together on doing different things. And that was our first step, was really to put an intro and an outro so people knew that there was someone online. And Johnny and I would work together. And Pastor Johnny, who so grateful to have him to get him engaged online because with his experience in Celebrate Recovery and just amazing, and he's such a great benefit to be able to have at Saddleback and helping us out online. And so that was kind of the slow step, is that volunteering part time. And again, the church just saw literally over like I would say 2.5 years of me just helping out. And I really took it as a ministry. I just said, I'm just going to do this because I like to be on Facebook. I like Twitter and I like all that stuff. And I wanted to see what God was going to do. And then actually as recent as about 2 months ago, they finally said, hey, we're going to hire a full-time online campus pastor. And we're going to put it under our national church strategy team on our spiritual maturity kind of pillar at our church. And we want you to be it. And I was like, wow. And I wasn't going to be compartmentalized anymore. I was going to be able to fully focus on something. And that's kind of the short story of kind of how I've gotten where I am now. And I only have the benefit from people that have, been grateful to let me do what I get to do and have helped me along the way. And it's been really awesome. And so there's a lot of cool things coming our way as we're doing this new season of actually having a staff caring about it, and we're able to align and think through everything online. So
fantastic. Well, there's two things that I want to ask you about, and then I have 3 follow-up questions, and then I want to hear what you're dreaming of and other questions you have for our audience here at Social Media Church. So one of the biggest turning points that I noticed as an attender of Saddleback Church and keeping in touch with online churches around the country is there was a strategic or just a milestone one day when Saddleback Church decided to do an online service every 2 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's like, 80 services a week?
Yeah, it's just about 80, if you can.
Yeah. And so what is the philosophy behind doing that many services, and what kind of an experience do you try to provide at each service?
Yeah, we slowly inched up. We had 5 live services, and then we did a couple. We call it Sim Live, short, simulated live. We will take a live service and rebroadcast it. And the idea, there's kind of 3 thoughts. You either do live, you do Sim Live, and then you do on demand. And those are kind of the 3 ideas that how they approach online campus. We actually do all 3. At a Sim Live and a live, it's kind of funny. You kind of get lost in this language, but we call Sim Live and then live. But this idea of we rebroadcast things because we want community to happen at one time. So the content is always going to stay the same to us, but the idea is that if we can set a time, be from here to here, and if people gather, it's kind of like that idea of like Saturday Night Live on the West Coast is rebroadcasted. But the idea is everyone gathers at one point to watch it. And we believe as people gather at one point to watch it, there's more ability for community to happen, either in chat or offline. On demand is great, and I think on demand has its place. I listen to a lot of podcasts and different things on demand, but I believe there's some limitations with on demand because it's very individual. It's on your own schedule. It's usually when you're running, you're going to work. I listen to a lot when I'm driving. But we don't want people just to listen to the message. We want people to do life with other people. And on demand has some limitations there, but because you can't timeline it. You're not on the same, you're kind of not experiencing everything on the same track. And simulated live and live allow that. So, we went from 5 live services to about, then we added 10 simulated live services, and then we added 2 more a day, and then now we're up to this 80 plus a week. And the idea is that live has a very small reach. If you think globally, live is limited by time zone, and so I've done this number where, you figure out how many people are in the Pacific time zone. It's like somewhere in the neighborhood of 50, million plus. I did these numbers a couple months ago, but the idea was, your reach is pretty big, obviously. But at the same time, when you think about the potential of, somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 billion people in the world, I think in 2011, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2.3 billion people used the internet in 2011, 2.3 billion. And that means when you do simulated live, when you rebroadcast every 2 hours and you hit all the time zones, you are actually hitting that number, 2.3 billion, instead of just hitting your 50 million or so that are in your time zone. And so we saw the potential of rebroadcasting our message every 2 hours and be able to have no limits. And again, the value was if we rebroadcast it and have a set time, ideally what we're praying for is that people gather at those points and watch the message together. And we're becoming better at, and I would say the experience we offer now, we are, it's an experience that was developed about 3.5 years ago. And so
3.5 years, that's ancient.
it's ancient, and we're grateful because, I'm grateful that we even have it. But two, I mean, yeah, you said it, it's ancient. And so with me being full time now, we are right now redesigning, rethinking, redoing everything. And so we're hoping, our hope is at the beginning of 2013, we can launch with a whole new experience online. And we are redoing everything. We're rethinking, what does it look like to do this? And what do we want? And so, and simulated live to us is one of those deals of, we can really hit everyone. And I'm not super proud of where we're at now. I think it's a resource thing. And every church has this. It's, what can we do with our budget? And we're right now rethinking and redoing all that. And so we have some exciting things coming out here real soon. And I could share a little bit of that, but that's coming in the beginning of 2013. That we're planning and praying that we can launch everything, because we have a big campaign coming up where Rick's releasing his purpose-driven life, and so we're trying to align with that. And so, anyways, that's a little bit about us going every 2 hours. It's just to hit the potential. It's to have a bigger target, and there really is. You think about the money that's poured in to launch a church. People pour everywhere to $50,000 to $500,000 to launch a church, and we can launch a online church with little to no resources. It may not be the best experience, but the potential to be able to hit that big target, it's ridiculous. We want to leverage that to, win people to Christ and also help them figure out how to live for Christ, online and offline. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about why we, again, we started launching more and more services. I know churches do it all different ways, and I think they're all great, and it all is contextualized to your community, your message, and kind of your reach. And it just happens we're at a church that, Pastor Rick has a global reach, and we can leverage him in a huge way and how God's using him. And, we talk about riding waves, and, God's blessing, him and our church, and we want to continue to ride that online and to provide more and more ways for people to be part of that. And we have, weekly we have anywhere from 100 to 130 countries tune in online to our message, and it's really cool.
Yeah, and in the show notes, I'll link to the infographic that you put together on just some of the numbers showing how many people are being impacted and touched by your online internet campus.
Curious, and that's one of my questions. We can get to the end about numbers of how you've watched. That's a big question. Churches online report numbers so differently. It's
Sure.
like some by hit, some people do it by this, and we can go into the end. I'm a lot like that's one of my questions, but I'll let you ask.
Well, I mean, the more you talk, the more questions I have, because there's so much going on, and I think partly because I'm a part of Saddleback myself, that I want to get under the hood and really learn more, and also find a way where I could participate too. And so maybe we'll set up a whole series, and I don't know, maybe they'll spin out to be a whole podcast in and of itself, just to have Saddleback share, because I know Saddleback's very generous with sharing its resources with other churches too, and Pastor Rick's been an example of that. But but I'm also running out of time, so I need to bring some closure to this. One of the things that I have been watching eagerly is how Saddleback not only does the online services, but you're also one of the few churches that do online small groups.
Yeah.
So tell us how you are able to empower people online to participate in community life besides the worship service through these online small groups.
I mean, that's the essence of, you read, Acts 4 type of community when the word gathering church, kind of that word kind of arises that we want people to be able to connect with other people. That's the fear online is that you are empowering, these individualistic, kind of antisocial tendencies. And I think that's a bunch of, what you can call it. Um, I want to reach people where they're at, and but I also want to provide them a pathway to be able to do the type of community I believe is biblical and sound and healthy that God has built us for. I'm at a church that my pastor has written things like better together, and small groups is at the essence, at the core of our kind of ministry philosophy, and we had to figure out a way to do community online. Um, I benefit again from Ephraim Muhlenberg, who is over our online groups, and our leadership, Pastor Steve Gladen, and different people have done things online that honestly I wasn't a part of originally. When they started doing online groups, they just started experimenting, and I literally came into the room and I found out what they were doing, and I was like, "What can I do to help?" I was like, "Continue." And so the online group stuff has just blown up, and I have the benefit now to be able to work side by side with Ephraim, who's our online director, and he's just such a talented and gifted guy, and he's doing so many great things. And pretty much the idea is that we want people to be able to connect in a browser, and so we actually built this whole deal, and people talk, chat in different avenues, and they watch curriculum together. And so when, here at Saddleback, when you do a small group, usually you have curriculum you go through, either as a whole church we go through, or you have different stuff you can go through, or you can, obviously read through a book together, and we'll give you parallel, study guides to be able to help you go through that. And all we did was we provided a way for that to happen online. Is that we want people to be able to connect and do life with each other. We want people to be able to, to the best of the ability, share their story together, interact and care for each other and challenge each other, have accountability. And online groups is kind of our way to do that, our big way to do that, at least right now. And so it's pretty much a browser that they connect and talk to each other, and they watch curriculum together, and then they interact with it. And content again is, there's so much great content out there. You can do it in so many great ways, but it's really the connections that make a difference. And again, I believe that's what makes it a campus and not a stream. Again, anyone can do a stream. Anybody can throw up a webcam and throw it somewhere. But what makes online campuses different is that community, is that gathering, that heaven focused kind of people that are doing life together and intentionally growing and confessing and working through just what does it look like to be a believer. And online groups is how at this moment we're able to interact with people all around the world and empower people to do community online. But I believe online groups is one option. I want people to be able to interact, because I believe online groups are I believe online groups are going to be a way for just a percentage of people to be able to do community, because not everyone's tech savvy like us and gets it. Some people don't interact that way. Not everyone does. And so we're also trying to figure out, hey, how do we empower people to start community in their homes? And maybe they watch the service together and they invite people over. And it's almost like it becomes almost somewhat of a house church, that you're living out the vision of Saddleback, and you're figuring out what does that look like practically to you in your community, wherever you're at geographically. And so online groups is one way, but also offline groups is another way. And we're actually experimenting and walking through a lot of cool things to do that right now.
Okay, well, let me try to summarize it for the listeners who are trying to figure out how to do online small groups. That, from what I can tell, Saddleback provides a library of curriculum
Yes.
And then people who are group leaders or group hosts can sign up for a time slot, commit to going through a curriculum together, and then you provide the web-based platform for people to have a chat room and discussion thread. Is that how it actually works?
We've originally started with video and audio and a bunch of different things. We had some bandwidth and when you get six video deals together, there's a lot of echoing, there's a lot of issues. And so we're actually redoing that right now. We're trying to think through, I think video and audio is so important. Right now it's only chat based because of some of those syncing issues. And so again, that's some of the stuff we're dreaming and planning and trying to figure out, okay, what are some resources? Obviously Google Hangouts and different things are some great models. We're definitely looking into all sorts of things. We're very open. But yeah, that's the idea. They watch cricket. We provide the online platform and they interact with each other and they set times like any normal. It's like hanging out with friends. Hey, we're all going to hang out at this time. And the only difference is they watch something and it's focused on what it's focused on. Living for God, figuring out. What does that look like? We really challenge again, don't limit your faith to the 1 hour that you watch the message or the 1 or 2 hours that you interact in a chat room. It's, hey, how does this bleed out into your offline world? And that's what we're really gearing for is a 24/7 lifestyle that's geared towards Jesus. And these are only touch points. It's the same issues that local churches have. It's like you only have them 1 hour, and how do you encourage them, inspire them? And that's where social media and different things become great resources because you get to invade their work life. You get to invade all those different areas.
Fantastic. Well, since you are Saddleback, you have the iconic presence of having developed a baseball diamond to capture the purpose-drivenness of how to develop a disciple of Christ. And so when it comes to online campus, how much of that gets to be done through an online campus? I mean, what does membership look like? What does baptism look like? What does communion look like? Or do you use an asterisk on your online campus to say, we're not there yet, maybe we'll get there, or we use it as a funnel to feed into a physical campus? Where are you at in that conversation currently?
That is man, you hit that's the question. A lot of my friends that I talk to in online campus, they're all different areas. Some people have fully bought in. Some people are in between. Some people have actually closed down their online campuses because of this very issue of membership. Things like baptism. There's a lot of liability issues. There's a lot of things that come up. Definitely, I mean, I'm a guy that, I grew before I came to Saddleback, we did a purpose-driven style. So that whole idea of the diamond, the funnel, different things like that, that's embedded into the core of who I am. And so I definitely think through things through community to commission kind of breakdown. And so our diamond right now, I definitely would say it's for sure a work in progress because three big things that we're figuring out right now is membership online is a huge thing because our membership team here at Saddleback is walking through what does it look like. I don't believe it's ever going to be a full-fledged membership that's similar to our local campuses. I believe it will be a hybrid for good reasons. I think for the main reason is because you're not going to be committed to the Lake Forest or the Orange County community. You're going to be committed to needs that are in your community. So if you're in North Dakota or in Florida or in Manila or wherever that's at, it's going to look different, and your action steps and the accountability is going to look different. So I believe we're going to have some kind of hybrid of membership, depending if that happens. Or, to be honest, we might just call it something else for various reasons. And the other thing is baptism. What does it look like to get baptized through the internet campus? Oh, man. I have friends that have done, the water, through Skype. I have friends that, no, that is just, you're crazy. That's not what you need to do. I believe we're going to use a lot. We're going to think through that in big time here very soon. I have some opinions on it. I don't want to get into that. But we definitely need to provide a way for people to get baptized. If it's through empowering a local believer or through correlation or through, partnerships with local churches, we're going to help get people baptized. I believe as community happens more and more organically locally, um, I call them like new relationships. Um, that's going to become easier. We have no problem with believers baptizing other believers, but how does an online group that maybe one believer is in California, but the other's in somewhere in Germany? How does someone baptize? And so I believe we can help. We can provide a pathway of, hey, you're in Germany. Hey, we have a church down the street that we trust. Go there, we'll baptize you. Or do you have another believer with you? We'll train you. And so there's some things we're figuring out. And then the third thing is just providing an easy way for people to do fellowship offline. And so how does that look like? And we learn from things like Meetup and different things like that of how do we get people to gather. And so right now, membership, baptism, and people doing local community outside of our Orange County reach, those are things we're figuring out. And so we have a diamond, but it's broken right now. It's like we have it like we're figuring that out right now. So
Well,
and I spent a lot of time asking a lot of churches, hey, how did you guys figure that out? How did you guys do that? Did you guys write a whole paper on it? Like what happened? And so that's where I'm doing the most growth. And usually my first question to online campus pastors and even teachers, I go back to old teachers. I spend a lot of time, I'm in the midst of my MA in theology. So I go to teachers and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm actually thinking about doing a class with one of my teachers on this very topic of being able to write my own curriculum on all this and be able to read and study up all on this very idea. Because I also don't want to be, I don't want to do something that's dangerous. I believe in, being sound and aligning with, the faith. And I don't want to provide something that's unhealthy. And so it's very close to my heart.
well, fantastic. And you're at a point as a church about to launch
Yeah.
global locations in 12 gateway cities. And so I'm sure that's also another conversation parallel to the development of your internet campus and how that can integrate into your on-the-ground campuses that are all over the world.
Really, I mean, we will always, I will say, we will always funnel people to local churches. I mean, we will always. If that's what you want, what you need, what you're used to, and where God has you, we're going to plug them into a local Saddleback church. We're going to have a funnel for that, or international. And as we launch these 12 cities, we're definitely, I was just talking to someone online who's a moderator for me, who moderates one of our services, and I found out she's in, Manila, where we're launching one of our campuses, and we were talking over Skype, and I was like, hey, when that happens, I want you to be engaged with that. That is, be engaged with that as much as you want. Be engaged online, but as we launch things, my goal is to plant more and more of those, and so we want to empower that, and so we're always going to have a place for the local kind of traditional way to do church. I mean, that's where my wife and I go. We go to the Lake Forest campus. I see a value in that, but I also see the potential where people don't have healthy local churches, and the idea that we can bring something to the table to help encourage their faith. And I don't want to stop that just because for various reasons. And so definitely the international, we get to funnel people to churches that are outside of our reach and that are a part of our network, which is awesome. So
Okay, well, I'm going to stop here because my time is short, and I know you've got a list of questions for our listeners and a few for me. So shoot them out.
yeah, no, definitely. I don't know if you want to like cut this up, but this is going to be, I mean, first off, I was curious, where do you go? First off, right off the bat, where do you go to keep up to date on different trends, your resources or different websites that you follow?
Yeah, well, I have a Twitter list. Also, Mashable, TechCrunch, Engadget. Those are kind of the hot pulse points for technology. The Next Web I like a lot because they synthesize the trends. And then when I want to go really techie, then I go to Twit TV and GigaOM for more industry insiders. Then you can kind of get a sense of where things are headed. And I like to stay on the front edge of the curve because I'm more of an ideas guy and resource the church that way. So, for example, I built the first Tim Keller webpage on the internet, and this is back in I want to say 1998 or close to 2000. And look at where he is now, right? And I've been spending time trying to figure out Google Plus Hangout and Google Plus Hangout on Air. And so I love experimenting with new technology and finding ways for how that can work in the church. And so I'm constantly exploring on the frontiers of internet technologies. And so for me, it's just doing a lot of channel surfing. I used to keep up with about 300 to 500 blogs. And I'm happy to share my blog role with that, but I'm no longer able to keep up. And it's becoming more fluid. So it's a mix of Twitter, blogs, and podcasts. I've been getting back into podcasts, not just because I'm podcasting, but podcasting, particularly audio podcasting, allows you to consume content without opening your eyes. And my eyes are tired from reading and watching videos, and everything else requires the eyes. And there's something nice to just be able to osmosis and take in content through the ears as well.
That's well said. I was curious, with all your interactions with Track in the 6 years, I was just curious, I know people track, I think Life Church, I know Life Church tracks their weekly attendance by hits, page hits. There's churches that maybe use the media social platform, the Plain Joe Studio guys. They track it at 5 minutes. We have an internal, obviously the larger the church is, the more resources you have. And so we have an internal deal, and we were pretty meticulous on, we don't want just a view. We want to make sure they're, watching the whole thing. So we started tracking for 30 minutes. So when we report numbers, it's people, their IP address has been tracked for 30 minutes straight. And I was curious, do you have an opinion what's the best way to track your numbers, at least online? And then is there a way someone does it that you like it the most? I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a organizational and strategic planning question that in every strategy meeting and consulting things that I've been a part of, the question is, how do you measure success? And so it's very contextual to the organization of how they want to measure that. But what's nice about the digital world is you have more data that's trackable digitally than you do physically. And so to really leverage that well is an awesome thing. And probably the first thing I would say is what Vince Marat said on episode 3 of Social Media Church is track everything possible. So archive all that tracking data. And then that way, historically, you can always look back and look for the trends that are most meaningful that fulfill the organization's missions. So keep an archive of all the data that you can possibly have. And then secondly, pick one that is fairly easy to get to, that kind of provides a benchmark. So whether that's IP addresses or visitors who've stuck around for at least 10 minutes, start somewhere and use that as a benchmark. And then when that number becomes less useful, you can always switch tracks because you've got all the data archived. So archiving is very important because you don't know what you need to know down the road.
I like that. I agree. The consistency in that benchmark is huge. One thing that it's just a little unfortunate. It's like when you look out and people start saying different things, and all the people I know that report the numbers, it comes from a great place. And so it's not an issue of the numbers, but it's like we have such a hard time gauging where everyone's at because, when you go from page views to 5 minutes to 30 minutes, the numbers fluctuate. It's the difference. And so I was just, I was almost thinking about a couple, like a year ago, I was like, man, I just want to go out there and like gather a couple of the people, the big heavy hitters, and can we just pick one consistency to report externally? Internally, we're always going to have our numbers. But I was just, that's something that I'm like, now that's just more because you talk to people and they say something like, oh, you have that many people. How do you do that? And you find out, it's very internal, and you're right. It's by the organization. And so,
I've kind of given up on that in the tech world because part of the thing about technology is everyone has their own biases and preferences for standards. And that's why we don't have standards. Whether you look at browsers or even social networks. So I was teaching a couple workshops at the NWLC National Worship Leader Conference this week, and I have a chart of the top 10 social networks, and the millions of users on these networks, and they all measure differently. So whether it's YouTube, WordPress, Facebook, Twitter, they measure differently. And last week, October 4th, 2012, was a day in social media history when Facebook exceeded 1 billion monthly active users. Okay, but then you have to look at, well, how do they define monthly active users? And it's some convoluted thing about people who happen to log in and connect to Facebook, whether directly at facebook.com or a third-party app that's talking to Facebook, and they're doing some kind of a social action with us, whether that's a like, comment, share, or post. And so it just becomes very difficult for people who are not techie to understand that. And companies have their ego that they want to show the biggest number possible, and same thing with churches by and large.
I hadn't thought about it that way, especially if you look at that. I mean, that's definitely, I mean, hey, that's a huge issue as we, I mean, one of the big things when people can't connect online, I'm spending half my time jumping between all the browsers I can think of. And I'm jumping from, my Mac to, I'm trying to grab someone's PC locally to pull to see how does that view, but yeah, the standards university, that's true. That's just a general issue online. I haven't thought about it that way. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so having a broader perspective helps me to get less frustrated that people are using different metrics to try to measure things. So it's really hard to compare apple to apples. And then you mix that with different denominational and theological and philosophical differences of what online church means. So having one number that might potentially work across board isn't all that meaningful per se, but what is meaningful is how it connects to a church's mission, and maybe looking at more of the financial model and looking some other numbers as well. Are they trying to make a self-sustaining online campus, or do they see it as an outreach? And stories, life-changing stories and number of volunteers are probably way more meaningful than just viewers.
Yeah, and I will, I mean, that's definitely where, I mean, again, we're about life change, and we're about changing people's lives. So I definitely care more about salvations, when we're able to do it on a bigger scale, coordinating baptisms and people in community, because it's hard. We have the same issue locally of, we count people, we don't know their heart, their intention. And you're totally right when you're sharing that thought from episode 3 from your podcast that, we're able to track more online. And but at the same time, we really don't know, like people, especially I get to serve under a pastor that, other pastors look towards for wisdom and advice. And so I don't know our community, but so if we have 5,000 people watching for 30 minutes, I don't know percentage-wise exactly their intention online. Are they here because they actually want to be part of the online community? Or are they from another church? Now, again, that's the same issue at our campuses. We don't know. But online, our true gauge becomes how many people are in community. How many people are in an online group, meeting offline, how many people have been saved this past year, so forth. And so those are the numbers that I do personally, care more about. Obviously we monitor our attendance to kind of see, trends and see what's going on. But I was just curious of your opinion on that. So that's cool. I guess the only other question I really had was, is online church and everything we're doing, with your education from Dallas and so forth, and everything you've monitored just with your years of experience, are you scared about anything online theologically?
Boy, am I scared about the theological ramifications of online church? Not so much. I think most of the other church leaders have taken that posture already. And so when you look at what's in print and what the pundits and theologians are talking about with online church, the majority of what's in print already has that defensive posture. And so I don't think they need another defensive posture. So there's too much caution and not enough R&D and experimenting and stepping out in faith into what God has allowed to happen. And I think one of the best churches that's helped me to see that is a book by Doug Estes titled Sim Church. And so I think what the online world opens up to us is getting more in touch with what's going on in the soul, which we all have as spiritual beings, and that is not so constrained by the physical. And I think it opens up a whole new paradigm of who we are in Christ and how we connect through the Spirit with the body of Christ that is global. Yeah. And so I see it as a huge opportunity rather than one of fear. I know there's a value for incarnation in the physical, and I value that too. So when I'm in physical proximity at a conference with people, I actually unplug and go offline. But I mean, you're 25, I'm 46, and so I'm realizing I have a 15-year-old son, so I really watch him closely at how technology is being more and more integrated, that people relate seamlessly online and offline, is how technology is being integrated into our incarnational being. And I think it's new territory, and we need to step into it by faith rather than by fear.
I think the best, and I feel like you're going to have to break this up into parts if it's worthwhile. But I do believe what's going to make a difference, and a lot of stuff I'm studying and researching is a lot of the house church movement stuff, because I think that's where, if you have a value, and I do, for near relationships, in-person community, but I also, you see that model even, in the New Testament. You see, local gatherings, but somehow Paul is still connected from a distance. And I go, man, I see the ability for connection, and I see both. And I, like you said, how your son who's 15, how it's integrated. I think that's where we got to watch that. It's just, it's gonna become more and more as it becomes easier and easier. I mean, that's that idea of Web 2.0. I believe 3.0 is gonna, whatever that is. And you probably know about this more than me because I don't follow this stuff, but I think 3.0 and on, all that stuff, all it's going to mean is it's not going to become forced. It's just going to become natural. It's just going to be one. Online and off, it's just going to become an extension as it is now. And it's going to become, as that becomes easier and easier, online church, whatever that looks like, as we move forward, it's going to become more healthy, because it's going to be the more ability we're going to be able to connect on. It's going to seem more real, and it's going to be more real in various reasons. But I don't know where that's going. I mean, that's technology. It just evolves it literally evolves every day. It seems like there's something new coming out. And so anyways.
Yeah, so I have to use the Bible as my proof text. That's a virtual item from thousands of years back. And yet that's very much a part of our spiritual community and anchor, and that gives us the fellowship of the saints. And the just shall live by faith. And I think that has the most application into how we step into the 21st century in a digital world where we are interconnected physically as well as online.
Hope that.
Man, great chatting with you, Jay. We will continue this conversation online and in person. And so we got to set up a time to meet in person, since we're so close.
And you're not far at all.